Hello, hello, everybody. This is Lio Convoy, and we are live. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm going to go ahead and give everybody a little bit of time to get situated here before we completely start this stream. Thanks as always to my patrons, and yes, we will be doing normal edited videos here again very soon. But, you know, it's been kind of relaxed. Had a lot of stuff going on here, so let's see here. Go ahead and post this up. All right. So I see we got a few people in the chat already. So let's go ahead and... Who done dinged me? Dusan. Not really sure what he's talking about. We'll start here in just a moment. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. We are going to get started by letting you know that I am going over a channel that's called Looper, and they have several million subscribers. Now, the problem with Looper isn't that they cover nerd things, isn't that they cover 80s related things. It's that it's very clickbaity, often constructed in a way that makes little to no sense. So we're going to go through at least 3 of their videos, 2 He-Man, 1 Thundercats, and I'm going to point out that the moments when they're being disingenuous, the moments when they're being dishonest, or when it's just plain stupid. So let's go ahead and get started with, let's see here. Oh, thank you very much for the super chat, Jody. Let's start with things that only adults noticed in He-Man. Remember, only adults notice these things. Literally no one else. No one. Just no one. It can't be anybody else, just the adults. So let's go ahead and get this started. Let me know if you need help hearing things.
The kids who watched the original Masters of the Universe cartoons are well into adulthood now, and some might notice that the show isn't quite what they remember from back in the day. Here are some of the bizarre, hilarious, and worrying things that only adults will notice in He-Man's adventures.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure it's very worrying. I'm sure nobody but you, Looper, noticed this, and it's only adults that notice. Nobody else. Nobody.
Being so distracted by all the thrilling action and scary monsters, most kids didn't care about the ideology that fueled He-Man and the Masters of the Universe: capitalism.
Oh no! Not capitalism! No, that's not the ideology that fueled Masters of the Universe. Because remember, when they're talking about He-Man, they're talking about the cartoon. They're not talking about the mini-comics. They're not talking about the DC and Marvel comics of the 80s. They're talking about the cartoon. The ideology that fueled the He-Man cartoon, I'm talking about within its production, is pro-social values. Lou Scheimer did, the Cosby Kids. He did a lot of things. He very much so valued proper morals within kids' entertainment. That is what fueled He-Man. That is the thing in the background that they're all ooky spooky. Oh no! So let me go ahead and pull up a list here because my friend Dusan, he's hitting people with some hard crap here. So let's go ahead and do this some more.
But present-day parents who are all too used to their kids begging for toys they've seen on TV now recognize that one of the main purposes of the He-Man cartoon was to move merchandise. The show kicked off an action figure craze in the 80s, selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of toys.
It wasn't He-Man that kicked off the action figure craze. Star Wars. In a decade previous that bled into the 80s. Now, as far as being made to sell toys, everything. Every show, every movie, every book, every blog you encounter is trying to sell you something. So why is it demonized when it's a toy, but not if it's a specific ideology? And this isn't the whole, oh, yes, JWs. No, I don't subscribe to that mentality. I'm talking about just in general. Why is that not demonized as much as, you want to sell toys? Well, yeah, but you got to make the show not suck first.
And every episode of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe served as its own 30-minute ad. Many episodes would introduce some never-before-seen character who just so happened to be now available in action figure form at toy stores. These characters all seem to possess a unique ability or feature that, conveniently enough, really popped when molded in plastic.
Oh man, it's almost like within the annals of superhero stuff, they all have special powers that is specific to them. Huh. It's almost like this has been a trope going back at the point in the 30s, 50 years. Oh man. No, it was clearly just He-Man. That's the one that started it. It's just to sell toys.
Take Mechanic or Buzz-Off, for example. Two characters who can only possibly have been conceived so as to make up a shortfall in the merch budget. There's no other
Do you know what shortfall means? Like, I don't think you do. Okay, as far as Buzz-Off here goes, he has, like, apparently only one part of him that was repurposed. Just one part, and that was the crotch. Now, keep in mind, I'm getting some of this detail from Dusan. He knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. At least in terms of very hyper-specifics. I know that in the way of Thundercats, but Dusan knows that in the way of He-Man. He spends a lot of time with James Eatock, so I'd imagine they know quite a bit. But no, Buzz-Off had nothing to do with budget constraints. He was almost from the ground up brand new toy. And he was an interesting character. He's actually one of Tyler Baker's favorites. Let's go ahead.
Explanation. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was obviously heavily inspired by other shows and movies. After all, a muscle-bound guy in a loincloth fighting monsters in a strange world? That's some straight-up Conan the Barbarian stuff right there. And that's fine.
You don't say. You don't say. It's almost like Conan the Barbarian was the jumping point of barbarian fantasy. Kind of weird.
Fine. Conan itself borrowed plenty of sci-fi and fantasy tropes, and He-Man does.
Can you name one? Can you name one that Conan itself borrowed from other media? No, because you're reading a script from people who are dumber than you. John, Mechanic is no dumber than literally any other character. Like, having an extending neck is no dumber than a giant fist. It's just fiction. Now, we're going to get into the lazy names here in a minute, but let's go ahead.
Is the same. That's just how media works. It's just that adults will notice He-Man's cribbing is especially lazy. He-Man itself is an old phrase that means manly man, while
because he was created from the ground up to be the biggest freaking dude. So yes, his name was He-Man.
Other hastily named characters include a skeleton named Skeletor.
Skeletor's name wasn't hastily made. It was originally going to be Demon Man. Skeletor basically watered it down a little bit, make it more palatable. Like, these people have no idea what they're talking about. But we're going to go into the naming conventions here in just a little bit.
And a sorceress named the Sorceress.
Sorceress is a title. Her name is Tila Na. As far as the names go, though, how is He-Man and Skeletor any lazier than literally any comic character? Or heck, we can talk about Power Rangers. The Red Ranger. Oh, it's a primary color plus Ranger. Oh my goodness. What brilliant names. It's just part of the naming convention, you anal retentive idiot.
But at least those are mostly innocuous examples. Some of the other He-Man characters have names that, well, let's just say they take on a different dimension once you're all grown up. Isn't that right, Fisto?
And when Fisto offers you his hand, boy, that's a big offer.
Yes, Fisto had a large fist. If the joke is always, Fisto, that sounds like fisting, number one, you're deranged. This is something for kids. And number two, who cares? If Mrs. Marvel, not Captain Marvel, Mrs. Marvel can make her hand big and saying embiggen, why is it that should not be laughed at? Not saying they're saying that, but just ideologically, Fisto must be mocked. Yeah, he's got a giant iron fist. That's why his name is Fisto. Just like there's Cyclone. Guess what he does? He spins around in circles and creates cyclones. Or Beastman, who commands animals. Oh no. How dare you have a name that sounds more risque when you get a perverted lens to it. You people are morons.
There might not be too many people on Eternia, but there are clearly plenty of gyms, since every single character on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is in fantastic shape.
Really? Everybody? Everybody. We're going to come back to that in a minute thanks to Dusan. But everybody, keep that in mind.
All of the male characters are as ripped as professional bodybuilders, with enormous muscles covering each of them from head to toe. The women, meanwhile, fit right into the hugely unrealistic 80s standard of beauty.
Wait, hold on. Unrealistic. You do realize that most of these were done through rotoscoping, which is motion capture in like a primal sense. They ran through real footage of real people doing this, and then they drew over it. These models had these shapes. It's not unrealistic. I'm sorry you don't know what a gym is.
With the battle of good versus evil that constantly plagues Eternia, it's hard to imagine how the men have 4 hours a day to lift weights, or how the women fit in the Pilates, yoga, and aerobics they must be doing on the regular.
Or they live in a futuristic/barbarian society, and that's just the norm. But here, Dusan made a nice little list, and we're going to go through part of it. Episode 1. These are all characters that do not have athletic builds. Zagreus, Evelyn's old woman disguise, old Zack, Jarvan, Demos, Torella, literally all the widgets, which you're correct about, Azrog, Locust's human disguise, Dwarves, Chef Allen, Draka, Tullamore, Messenger, Mask's disguise, Trevor, Professor Smolin, Neptu, pre-transformation, Count Marzo, Kothus, cowardly villager with a cap. That's probably what he's listed as in the, model sheets. Verder Bylon, Chancellor and Councilman, Sticky Fingers Leo, Hisser, Haro's wife, Jacob. Do I need to keep going on? Because he literally left me a massive list here. You have no idea what you're talking about. Continuing.
Regardless, the men and women of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe like to show off all that hard work, and pretty much everyone wears incredibly revealing clothing. Except Orko, of course, but that would be kind of weird.
God forbid a man run around in fuzzy underwear and these people lose their minds over it. You poor thing.
According to Masters of the Universe lore, He-Man is the most powerful individual in existence.
Incorrect. He's the most powerful man in the universe, meaning human. That's a connotation for man because he's part Eternian, part human. His mom's from Earth. There are characters within the lore of He-Man that are more powerful than him. Shigora is one. Evil Seed is another. These are the characters he has had to get help to beat. And then you have characters like Granomir who have made it very clear he can wreck He-Man anytime he wants, and He-Man acknowledges that. So it's literally in the title, the most powerful man in the universe. What are you talking about, most powerful being? Are you stupid?
And he's got plenty of powers and tools that have helped him reach that status. The power of Grayskull, for one, as well as brute physical strength, and the...
Wait, hold on, but he gets the brute physical strength from the power of Grayskull, and his Korodite harness enhances it. Did you even do the minimum amount of research, like at least listening to the intro? Because it literally spells it out every episode.
The Power Sword, a much-coveted Excalibur-like relic.
How is Excalibur-like? Was it gifted to him by a lady of a lake? Does it denote him as the true king of Eternia? No. No, it doesn't. The Power Sword is only Excalibur-esque in the sense that it has some sort of inherent magic ability. That's it.
Despite those gifts, however, He-Man is actually surprisingly wishy-washy. Most likely because the show's non-serialized nature means things always have to get back to normal by the end of each episode.
No, what you're so pointing to as this wishy-washiness is the fact that he doesn't just murk every villain he comes into. Because, and Penny Dreadful pointed this out in the Fans of Power podcast last night, He-Man's a likable guy. Yeah, he's big and buff and he can push a moon, but he's nice. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. He's like the really pleasant neighbor from across the way. Here, I'll put it to you 90s kids in a way you understand. He's a competent Herb Muddlefoot in terms of personality. He's a really friendly guy. He doesn't want to go around snapping people in half. Only sickos think he should.
As a result, He-Man never really uses much of the power afforded to him.
I'm sorry, what? He literally pushed the moon. What do you mean, not much of the... You have no clue what you're going on about.
He always lets bad guys get away, including Skeletor, who's pretty much the king of the bad guys. Since he knows he'll be back to fight Skeletor another day, He-Man always allows him to flee back to his headquarters from which he can continue his campaign of terror.
Yes, let us judge this children's cartoon from the 80s that was under very strict guidelines and very quick watch from parental groups and the government and get mad that He-Man didn't kill Skeletor. How dare they? How dare they? It totally didn't cause Lou Scheimer any problems. He wasn't getting frustrated at all by trying to use Skeletor over and over again, knowing full well sooner or later people are going to start asking why this guy isn't dead. No, that didn't happen at all. You're brilliant, Looper. This video has 64 Ks that are well-deserved.
The show's hero could easily make life better for the people of Eternia by ending his war and killing Skeletor with the power sword the first chance he gets.
Yeah, you see, the thing is, that actually happened a couple times in the mini-comics. Skeletor comes back. Because he's an evil sorcerer. They don't tend to stay dead. Or is this war? He-Man's completely reactionary. War, both parties can be aggressive or defensive or what. It's not a war. Skeletor's the underdog in the entire series. And I don't mean that in a way to where you should feel sorry for Skeletor. He's actively trying to change the status quo. He-Man, the sorceress, and his father Randor are in power of Eternia. Both by throne and by literal center of the universe where the castle sits. Skeletor is constantly going for that power. It's not a war. Good Lord.
But then there'd be no more show, would there? Having dominion over a whole planet, or even the universe, is no easy feat. And not even an evil, all-powerful sorcerer can do it alone. Skeletor boasts a huge crew of powerful servants, all loyally devoted to helping their boss destroy He-Man and take over Eternia. But Skeletor is so evil that he doesn't even appreciate how baddies like Beastman and Evil Lyn lay everything on the line for him.
Okay, first and foremost, Evil Lyn does it because she wants to, and because it serves her own purposes. She would stab Skeletor in the back if she thought she'd be able to get a Hostess pie on top of him. Like, that's her MO. And oh no, the evil villain treats people badly? Oh my goodness, somebody better call their HR department.
Day after day, risking life, limb, and more in service to this angry, cackling skeleton.
Wait, hold on, life? But you just got on to He-Man for not killing, so clearly they're not risking life. Limb? I mean, nobody gets maimed. I'm sorry, you're having contrary information in your own video?
He's forever unhappy with the performance of his underlings, mainly because they never managed to defeat He-Man or complete the task he's sent them to do. And he always happens to let them know it with a threat of violence or a withering put-down.
Why do I surround myself with fools? Even the robots are smarter than you!
Skeletor best be careful. Best case scenario, his put-upon employees flees to He-Man's side and reveals all kinds of secrets to Eterna's hero.
Skeletor has no secrets to reveal. He constantly has to come up with new schemes because he's literally going after secrets. Continuing.
Worst case scenario, they unionize. And then Skeletor's really in trouble.
Yeah, because I'm sure the literal overlord of evil is going to kowtow to a union. I'm sure you're going to get an HR director in there to try to tut-tut Skeletor at his OSHA violations. Yeah, that totally won't result in you having your council chamber chair, like, destroyed and cast into the wilderness. He's totally never done that to anybody before.
Even today, animation is a labor-intensive and expensive craft. And things were even tougher back in the early 80s, when He-Man and the Masters of the Universe aired. Production company Filmation churned out 65 episodes per season, and the crew had to find some shortcuts to keep things running smoothly. Kids with no frame of reference wouldn't know.
It wasn't shortcuts to keep things running smoothly. Lou Scheimer cared about his people. He cared about the animation industry, and where almost everybody else was outsourcing things to Japan or Korea, he wanted to keep it all within American procedures, and he wanted to be able to pay his people well. So yes, they used a lot of stock and bank animation to make it more simplistic and to keep them in budget because he cared about his people. I'm so tired of people using this as a negative against this show. It shows they either do not understand the people who worked on this show or they do not understand animation.
Notice, but adults with a cynical eye will easily spot the show's cost-cutting measures. The same handful of music cues are used over and over, and
that happens in modern cartoons too. Watch an episode of Steven Universe and tell me how many times you hear the theme song in the background during a fight scene. Same thing. Literally the same thing. It's a non-point.
So are a number of animation sequences. How many times do we see He-Man and Battlecat running or walking? The basic animation of their steps.
Yes, but if you look at the animation's good. Animation isn't about being flashy. It's about the illusion of life and movement. Because they used rotoscoping, those are literal movements of these people. And in the case of Cringer, Battlecat, cats. That's how they move.
Repeated for a good chunk of screen time. And of course, at least once per episode, Prince Adam is going to step in front of Castle Grayskull and gradually transform into He-Man.
Yes, because transformation sequences are freaking rad. And if you do not believe that still holds up to this day, I dare you to tell a Sailor Moon fan that the transformation sequences suck and they should be skipped. Let me know if you can get out of that pit without being scratched.
It's a good lesson for kids. Always recycle. Check out one of our newest videos right here.
I don't think I will. Instead, we're going to move on now to why Masters of the Universe will blow you away. This is, of course, pseudo reporting based on the information for the new Masters of the Universe movie that's totally coming out next year and hasn't been in limbo for 35 years or anything. Totally, guys. All right, let's go through this.
He-Man's first foray into theaters in 1987 didn't exactly go as planned, but the once mighty TV and toy...
You're not going to go into why it didn't go as planned, are you? You're not going to go into Mattel constantly cutting the budget. You're not going to go into a lot of shortfalls via the production crew or all the things that got cut out, which, by the way, She-Ra, Battlecat, Snake Mountain, they were all supposed to be in the movie. Just want you to know that. Continue.
Toy phenomenon is finally poised to get the reboot treatment. Even though the first movie was a flop, the new Masters of the Universe is far more likely to blow you away.
Based on what? Based on what? Okay, right now the comic rights for He-Man is in DC's backyard. We've had 2 decent live-action DC movies, Wonder Woman and kind of Aquaman. What are you talking about, you witless cretin?
Here's why. To say that the 1987 film Masters of the Universe was a bit of a disappointment would be a massive understatement. The movie starred Dolph Lundgren as He-Man, Frank Langella as the villainous Skeletor, and a young Courtney Cox as a newly introduced Earthling character named Julia Winston. Cox's character, in a way, embodied many of fans' major problems with the film.
Really? Are you sure that was their major problem with the film? This one ancillary character? Are you sure? Got a citation? Of course you don't have a citation. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not part of this community.
There wasn't anything wrong with the future Friends star's performance per se, but her having such a key role in the film left fans hugely frustrated.
Here, I'm going to do a hot take here. Are we all ready for my hot take? Frank Langella's Skeletor was brilliant, and Dolph Lundgren's portrayal of He-Man is a more accurate take on the character than anything we've had on him in comics for the past 35 years. Because what happens when he shows up and he finds a young woman in distress? Does he mock her? Does he push her aside? No. His first instinct is, oh my God, somebody needs help. I better help them because I'm the good guy. Let's not kill this other animal that we meet in the woods, this deer, because it's not a threat to us, and we do not need its food. These people are stupid.
2 reasons. First, Julia is from Earth, which is also where most of the film takes place. By contrast, the cartoon and comics were based on the planet Eternia, a fantastical land that combined elements of sword and sorcery with science fiction.
Hey, numbnuts. Where's He-Man's mom from? Earth. She was an astronaut who got caught in some sort of weird wormhole or something and wound up on Eternia. He-Man is part Earthling. Literally, the first DC comic with He-Man had Superman in it, where He-Man admits he had heard tales about Superman from his mother. I actually liked the I have the power line. I just wish it was more drawn out. Oh no!
He-Man's Julia is from Earth, which is also prevented fans from getting to experience He-Man in his element. Secondly, Julia Winston never appeared in the cartoon, the comics, or the toy line. She was a character created solely for the film.
So was Gwildor. And so were a whole bunch of other characters. What's your point?
And she wasn't the only one. Despite having dozens of well-liked and fascinating characters at their disposal, the filmmakers chose to forego them all in favor of their own.
No, they didn't. They didn't choose to forego them all. They didn't have a choice but to do so.
Like keyboard-playing Kevin.
Keyboard-playing Kevin was crucial because the cosmic key is tuned via music. You dunderhead.
What do you think?
Sounds great.
The creative team behind the new Masters of the Universe surely know just what went wrong with the original, and there's no way they're going to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Do you know them? Do you know magically all the people behind it? Because nobody else does. I would love to know your secrets from, how long ago was this? From a year ago. From this movie from a year ago, or this video from a year ago. Oh, they're totally not going to repeat the same mistakes, but they do. They always do. You want to know why they always do? Because it's always morons like you who want to praise them for it instead of calling them out.
Sorry, Kevin. It may be 2019, but these days you'd be forgiven for thinking it was actually 1989. Everywhere you look in pop culture, the decade of big hair, neon clothing, and Reaganomics seems to be taking over. Just look at what's on TV these days. Modern reboots of classic 80s series MacGyver and Magnum P.I. are both important blocks of CBS's primetime lineup, while ABC's...
Do you know why? I'm going to blow your mind here. It's because the people who make these shows now are my age. I can't remember who, but somebody did a really good video a while ago about how cartoonists, animators, tend to reference things from the previous decades in their work, citing things like the Powerpuff Girls episode that basically pointed out the Beatles in every single turn. Do you think kids mostly watching that understood that? No, for the most part, probably not, but older people did. And that's what you're seeing in media now. People my age are working on these things, so yes, they're going to throw back to their childhood.
Comedy lineup is partly anchored by the 80s set The Goldbergs and The Connors, a continuation of the 80s hit Roseanne. On top of all that, Netflix has a Voltron reboot, the Full House follow-up Fuller House, 80s wrestling drama Glow, and of course the massively popular Stranger Things, which even got Coca-Cola to bring back New Coke, one of the biggest product failures of all.
Stranger Things isn't good because it was based in the 80s. It's good because it has good writing.
All time as a tie-in. Netflix also produces She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, a reboot of He-Man's female-focused spin-off series, which debuted in 1985. If anything, the movie industry is even more in love with the 80s. 2019
Yeah, you can be in love with something and not understand it.
alone has seen reboots of Child's Play and Pet Sematary, with new sequels for The Terminator and Rambo on the way.
Yes, I'm sure the new Terminator movie was totally a hit and not a flop at all. It totally didn't garner a lot of criticism, both from people who had really good points and from idiots who didn't. But no, these points you're trying to make. Rambo, I enjoyed that film, but at the same time, you're making a lot of comparisons here that don't hold water compared to Masters at all.
In 2020, things are going to get even more retro, with belated sequels for Ghostbusters, Bill and Ted, Coming to America, and
Really? Because we're almost at the end of 2020, buddy. What happened there?
Top Gun all slated for release. Even the upcoming Wonder Woman sequel takes place in the 80s, and they're not even being subtle with that one. The film is literally called Wonder Woman 1984. People just can't get enough of the 80s right now, which means the time is ripe for a reboot of one of the decade's most iconic contributions to pop culture.
I want to point out something here real quick. All the other things you cited, with the exception of Voltron and the new She-Ra, were things that were based in the time period of the 80s. He-Man isn't based in the time period of the 80s. He-Man's based in whatever the time period currently is. I'm sorry, but you're not. If you do a He-Man and you're seeing new Coke and you're seeing parachute pants and neon Skechers and shaded glasses, like you're not paying attention.
Noah Centineo probably isn't who most Masters of the Universe fans had in mind for the role of He-Man. The young actor has dark hair instead of Prince Adam's signature blonde, for example. He's also fairly slight to build and lacks a bodybuilder's physique. On top of that, he's only...
Hey! Thank you very much, Jody, for another super chat. Here's the thing. Robert Downey Jr. also didn't have a mechanical suit. Huh. It's almost like they did a lot of animation to fix that.
23 years old. That means Centineo was born in 1996.
Also, do we ever have any data that Centineo is actually going to be He-Man? Because I don't think we ever actually got confirmation on that. I think it was a rumor that idiots like this peddled.
Long after He-Man had his moment in the sun. But despite his appearance not quite matching cartoon He-Man's and his relative youth, Centineo is who Sony Pictures cast for the lead in the new Masters of the Universe. And believe it or not, they seem to have known exactly what they were doing. Centineo may not look much like He-Man, but he is poised to deliver a memorable performance as the character nonetheless.
Based on what? You can be a really good actor, but if you're not a really good actor in certain avenues, you're going to suck.
Centineo burst onto the scene in a big way in 2018 thanks to his role in the Netflix teen romance To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Before appearing in 2 more films for the streaming giant, Sierra Burgess is a Loser and The Perfect Date. Thanks to his charismatic performances in these films, Centineo has become something of an internet sensation, and his likability factor will
Okay, here's the thing. You're taking a character from rom-coms, and you're going to put him in the world of He-Man. Now, here's the thing. Here's where I'll give credit. If he's a charming individual, if he's able to play a bit of a dork in terms of personality, he might be able to pull off a decent He-Man. He might be. But we're going to get into what my biggest issue here is shortly.
Likely go a long way toward helping him sell his incarnation of He-Man. And it's happened before, too. Just take a look at Chris Pratt. He wasn't anyone's idea of a typical action hero when he was playing chubby slacker Andy Dwyer on Parks and Recreation. But his performance as Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy completely changed people's perception of him.
Real quick, firstly, thank you, Odysseus Stallings, for the super chat. Here's the thing. Star-Lord, Chris Pratt, it wasn't that he was an action hero that made people like him. It's the fact that he did good acting and he sold the character emotionally. His fighting scenes are kind of goofy. That's it.
And now he's one of the world's biggest action stars. Expect Centineo to undergo a similar transformation. And sure, he can work out and throw on a wig to pull off the look of He-Man, but what's really going to make his performance memorable is star quality. Luckily, he's got that in spades.
You can have all the stars, the best stars in the world, and still have a garbage movie. If you don't have decent writing, if you don't have good characterization, if you do not understand the purpose. And you want to know, and you know, people were giving Robert Pattinson grief because he was complaining about training and how we need to get away from trying to match characters. You want to know the best and easiest way to be able to do a character that's really buff, like a superhero, and, I don't know, not have to worry about a workout regimen and destroying yourself? You animate it. You animate it. How's it going, DevCon? And Artistic Layman, thank you for joining us. If these people started actually trying to remove animation from just a kiddie thing and just start actually moving it into other things outside of just, here, let's have Robert Downey Jr. talk into a microphone for 90% of the movie as we animate this and then pretend it's live action. No. Use this. Disney built an entire empire off of animation that still holds up, and it was back in the freaking 30s, almost 100 years from now. That animation still holds up. 2D animation has a timeless quality to it when it is done correctly. Start utilizing it.
Two of the hottest genres in pop culture right now are science fiction and fantasy. For the past several years, the box office is dominated by the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has been trending more and more towards straight-up science fiction. Avengers Endgame deals with time travel, aliens, and all kinds of intergalactic insanity. And of course, another sci-fi film, Avatar, was the top box office earner worldwide before Endgame took the crown. On television, fantasy is in vogue, with the series finale of Game of Thrones recently becoming the most watched episode of any show in HBO history. And with multiple Game of Thrones spin-offs in the works, along with adaptations of Lord of the Rings and The Wheel of Time, it seems like fantasy will continue to dominate TV for years to come.
Yes, because Lord of the Rings has been a household name since J.R. Tolkien originally wrote it. Saying, well, this thing's popular, therefore He-Man will be good, and it's going to blow you away, because that's what it says in the title. The new Masters of the Universe will blow you away. No. It has to be good. I'm sorry, but that's what you're missing. It has to be good. Real quick here, the Space Trow asks, what do y'all think of the Netflix new He-Man continuation series? I think it's going to be absolute garbage. I think it's going to be unmitigated, unapologetic garbage because of the mental infants they have behind it, but we'll get into that shortly.
But it's when you successfully blend those two genres that the real magic happens.
Surprise!
I'm going to give my other hot take here. The Marvel Universe, the MCU, is watered down. It is watered down, vanilla, plain, easy consume nonsense that if anybody were to actually try to adapt the comics faithfully, 90% of people that like the MCU wouldn't read or watch it because it wouldn't appeal to them because it's too high in fantasy. And it would suck for those people because that means they have no imagination. I'm sorry, but the MCU's milquetoast. That's why it appeals to so many people.
Thor Ragnarok managed to pull this off with aplomb by taking Thor, the most fantasy-friendly Marvel character, and putting him into a retro science fiction environment.
You mean in the movie where they couldn't figure out if the tone was sad or funny? When he lost his dad and his entire civilization, and you wanted to crack jokes every 5 seconds because you couldn't be sincere? That's what you're hoping to pin this on?
The movie came up with something truly special and unique. Except, of course, it wasn't all that unique, because He-Man and the Masters of the Universe were doing it 35 years earlier. He-Man is about a society on the planet Eternia, where magic and alien technology exist together and are employed equally. He-Man may wield a magic sword and hang out with a sorceress, but he also sometimes flies a ship that shoots lasers. Fantasy and sci-fi can be tons of fun when they're mixed together, and given the franchise's long-established history of doing just that, the new Masters of the Universe movie ought to be a blast.
If it's written well, which it won't be, because every single person that's ever tried to do a script for this tries to do some edgy man-baby garbage. I mean man-baby in the sense of, if I make it sexually appealing and if I make it super violent, it'll be big and mature like me. No, have fun with it. People didn't enjoy the work of people like Jack Kirby because they were looking for realism. They enjoyed it because they embraced the absurdity and the fantasy.
Look, not everyone likes He-Man. That's fair. Prince Adam is kind of a dork, and He-Man himself is kind of just a buff guy with a bad haircut and no personality.
No personality. I'm sorry, but no. First of all, Prince Adam, he played that up. He played that up to try to throw suspicion off. It affected him on an emotional level because he was always having to let down his family due to his responsibilities of He-Man. And no, he absolutely had a personality. Again, he was extremely kind, he was very gentle, and he always tried to do his best to do the right thing. Where is this nonsense of him not having a person? Oh wait, it's from people who don't actually watch the show. No, DevCon, actually they don't. They don't mention it at all. They don't mention it at all.
But like the 1987 original, this movie isn't called He-Man, it's called Masters of the Universe.
So was the original show. It was called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Masters, plural. He-Man is part of an Avengers-like squad that fights evil, and each one of them is more awesome than the last.
No. They all have special, unique gifts. They're not more awesome than the last. Why are you so dumb?
There's Man-at-Arms, who's a master at every weapon and has a sick mustache. Tila, a unicorn-riding goddess, and
I'm sorry, what? When did Tila ever ride a unicorn? Did you get her mixed up with She-Ra? Did nobody look at the script? Why am I asking if anybody looked at the script? This is Looper, it's clickbait. How many views did this get? 503,000 views. Y'all couldn't have just gone and found a dumpster? It's cheaper.
and Battlecat, the armored steed that Prince Adam's cowardly tiger Cringer turns into whenever Adam becomes He-Man. And as cool as the heroes of the franchise are, the villains
Oh, Devcon, I agree. The mustache is vital. Classy.
are even better. Battling against He-Man for the power of Castle Grayskull are evil doers like Beastman, a hulking monster, Evil Lyn, a magic wand-wielding sorceress with a pun for a name, and
Pun for a name. No, it's a naming convention, you twit.
Trapjaw, a cyborg with sharp metal teeth and an arm that can be swapped out for numerous weapons. All of these bad guys act as henchmen for Skeletor, one of the most iconic villains in all of genre fiction. Skeletor is a diabolical blue-skinned brute with a skull for a head and an unquenchable lust for power.
Wait, hold on. There's a lot of things you can call Skeletor, but brute? Really? Brute? Since when does Skeletor ever try to outmuscle anyone?
For many, he's the best part of Masters of the Universe.
Okay, that's fair. So one correct thing you've said.
And seeing him adapted onto the big screen using today's technology will be worth the price of admission all on its own. As you probably figured out by now, Masters of the Universe is a pretty fantastical franchise, full of all kinds of magic powers, battles, heroes, and villains. Oh, and a castle shaped like a skull. Of course, it was relatively easy to show all those things in animated form in the 1980s.
Which means you can do it now. Dummy.
Because all you had to do was draw them. But bringing it all to life convincingly in a live-action movie was always going to be a far more difficult task.
Okay, what's this obsession lately with convincing? We must make this look real. We must make people believe this could really happen. What part of fantasy do you not understand? It's not supposed to be realistic. It's not supposed to be part of the real world. It's literal escapism. I don't need to believe that I could see Iron Man fly by my house. I don't need to believe that I could see He-Man riding down the street in, the Sky Sled. I don't need that.
In the 80s, CGI was practically unheard of, and most movies were still using puppetry and other practical effects. Puppetry can be fun and definitely has a strong nostalgia factor nowadays, but it typically isn't the most convincing visual effect modern movies have at their disposal.
It's better than most CGI.
Over the past few years, however, CGI has finally reached the point where it can create entire worlds and characters that are virtually indistinguishable from real life.
That is an outright lie. You can look at this scene right now, and there's something in your mind. Some primal, primitive thing. You know that's not real. And here's the thing about 2D versus 3D. 2D has an ageless, timeless concept to it. 3D, and I'm going to have to throw a little bit of shade here, and I am sorry. I love Beast Wars. I love Beast Wars. Beast Wars aged like milk in terms of the animation itself. That was cutting edge back in 1996. CGI does not age well. In 10 years, go back and watch the original Iron Man film, and then watch Avengers Endgame. Do not tell me you can't tell a difference. I'm sorry, but no.
In Avengers Infinity War and its sequel Endgame, for instance, the villain Thanos is completely computer and motion capture generated. Despite all that, however, he still feels like a real character. His facial expressions and other movements are incredibly lifelike, and at no point in either of those movies does he ever feel artificial. Using this technology will be the key to creating a convincing Eternia, and the prospect of seeing the planet come to life like never before is very exciting indeed. Post-credit scenes have become something of a given with big blockbusters over the past decade, thanks largely to Marvel popularizing the trend. But they've actually been around for far longer, and although they were rare at the time, post-credit scenes would still occasionally pop up in some 1980s films, mostly used in comedy to squeeze in one more joke.
Just real quick fun fact about me. The first after-credit scene I ever saw in animation was in Aladdin 2 Return of Jafar. I'm talking about in animation specifically.
Like in 1980's Airplane, 1987's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and 1986's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which had one of the most memorable of the decade.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.
Make me.
But then there was also the post-credit scene in the original Masters of the Universe, which remains one of the most notorious ever made. Near the end of the film, He-Man and Skeletor engage in a final battle that ends when He-Man knocks Skeletor into an unfathomably deep pit. Skeletor is presumed dead, and the film ends on a happy note. So far, so normal, right? Well, after the credits have rolled, this happens.
I'll be back.
That gave my sister nightmares. And that couldn't have been fun for Frank Langella, having all that makeup and prosthetic on. And then, hey, we're going to dunk you in water. Hold your breath.
It's a tantalizing, if slightly lame promise, and one which was doubtless made by a bunch of filmmakers who were confident they'd one day be producing a sequel. But in the end, it turned out that Skeletor lied, because the film was a massive critical and box office failure. No sequel was ever produced.
Because it came out at the wrong time, it differed too drastically from what people were expecting because of corporate meddling, lack of proper contract. And honestly, a lot of the film could be salvaged in terms of, accuracy to the lore just by color shifting some outfits. If you actually pay attention to Man-at-Arms' uniform, his outfit in the movie, it's almost one-to-one with the cartoon. It's just in a different color, so you don't pick it up.
Making Skeletor's tease at the end of the film utterly pointless. But now, with the new Masters of the Universe on the way, Skeletor will finally make his long-awaited return to the silver screen, and the character will be able to keep his promise after all these years.
Yes, and you are all going to make him go, meh, 5 times in the script, despite the fact that he never once did that in the original cartoon. Fun fact for those of you who are new here, Skeletor going, meh, comes from the 4 Non-Blondes He-Man video. That's it. That's where that comes from. It doesn't come from anything else.
Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus,
Nah,
even more.
I don't think I will. All right, so on to the fun one. All right, so this is things only adults notice in Thundercats. Only adults. Only adults. That's the only people who notice these things. So let's go ahead and get through with this.
Thundercats ranks among the best cartoons of the 80s, alongside the likes of Masters of the Universe and Transformers. You may not have noticed at the time, but Thundercats has some truly unusual touches that read very differently to adult eyes.
Oh no, we're going to get cynical, guys. We're going to notice things when we're adults. Are you ready? Are you ready, kids?
Thundercats is a bit of a sweeping epic, and it all begins with an oft-forgotten origin story. The Thundercats have to leave their doomed home planet of Thundera, and at the time, Lion-O is just a young boy. They're also mostly underdressed, by the way, but that changes quickly. Because of a long journey ahead of them, the cats have to spend time in suspended animation on the way to their new home. When they arrive on Third Earth, young Lion-O finds that his body has grown into that of a muscular adult man, but his mind is the same.
Why, I'm grown.
Even though the original team includes 3 actual adults, Lion-O is still the team leader because he's the hereditary Lord of the Thundercats. Early on, Lion-O's immaturity and naivety is a story point, but before long, that aspect mostly falls by the wayside.
Oh, by all means, tell me what point it falls by the wayside. Can you tell me? Do you have any clue? No, you don't. You have no clue. And the fact that you're showing clips from Season 2 doesn't help your case.
There are plenty of moments when Lion-O's behavior makes more sense when you remember that he's just an enormous kid. But it's almost
You gonna give us an example? Anything?
never made explicit after that first episode.
Also not true. They pointed out multiple times.
The fine figure of a Thundercat you've grown up to be, Lion-O.
And so handsome, too.
As Thundera falls apart during the show's premiere, the central Thundercats escape the destruction under the leadership of their wise old leader, Jagger. Jagger doesn't live to see their new home on Third Earth, but he frequently returns as a shimmering blue ghost. No specific explanation for the destruction of Thundera is given in that first episode. It's only much later in the 3rd season episode, Thundercubs, that we learn the reason for the entire planet falling apart, and it's all Jagger's fault.
Come join me for a history lesson.
Years earlier, when Jagger was a much younger man-cat, he'd defeated a mutant leader named Ratilla, who had carried a double-bladed magical weapon, the Sword of Plunder, which is basically the evil equivalent to the Thundercats' own Sword of Omens.
No, it's actually not. It's actually the weakest magical sword in the entire show. Like, bar none, it is the weakest magical sword in the show.
Upon defeating Ratilla, Jagger threw the Sword of Plunder into a volcanic canyon in order to destroy it. However, he underestimated the sword's evil magic, and the Sword of Plunder works its way to the core of Thundera, splitting the planet apart. Surprisingly, little is made of the fact that the wise advisor who has guided the Thundercats all this time actually made the mistake that cost them everything.
Okay, here's why. First and foremost, the sequence that shows how Thundera got destroyed via Jagger's action is a monologue from Mumra. Mumra, not one by the Thundercats. And despite what you might think, what you, the viewer, knows is different than what the characters in the show know. Also, he sealed it in the beneath of Thundera. I know this is gonna be an odd thing, but usually when you throw a sword into a molten core, you don't expect it to blow your planet up. Not something you generally expect. So no, I don't blame Jagger for that, and if the Thundercats knew, they probably wouldn't either. Jagger can't magically tell if something's going to cause planetary destruction. That thing is it's the weakest sword in the entirety of the Thundercats fiction. The Thundercutter, the Sword of Omens, Excalibur, they all body it. But good lord.
Thundercats largely takes place on a planet called Third Earth, but that can't possibly be our Earth, right? It just looks too weird. We live on First Earth, or as we call it, Earth. The third one must be out in space somewhere. However, if you pay attention, the show makes clear that third is a matter of time, not space.
Yes, in the 2nd episode where Mumra says that he was there since it was still called First Earth. Just like DevCon, I'm still waiting on the part only adults would notice.
This is Earth in its third age, when humans are no longer the dominant species, and many of the planet's inhabitants.
Fun fact, according to Leonard Starr's show notes, it was after a second nuclear holocaust. Third Earth is after a second nuclear holocaust. That's why. That's why it looks so different.
Are alien colonists and refugees from across the cosmos. The fact is made especially clear in the episode
Oh no, not alien colonists and immigrants. Don't tell the government.
Excalibur, when Merlin makes a guest appearance and reveals that the King Arthur stories took place on the same planet where the Thundercats now live. Merlin.
It was well known before then by the fact that Mum-Ra is an Egyptian. And he lives on Third Earth, and that there were battles in ancient Egypt for his supremacy. Stupid.
Merlin isn't the only ancient immortal who survived from First Earth to Third. The show's main villain, Mum-Ra, falls into the same category. With his glowing red eyes, deathly grey pallor, and twisted face, Mum-Ra is terrifying as 80s cartoon villains go.
I think he's probably pretty terrifying now, too. Like, I know that some modern cartoons have had some really good villains, like the Lich from Adventure Time. Mum-Ra is horrifying when you actually sit there and think about it. The Lich, yeah, he was evil, he was sealed away, he was part of nuclear warfare. Mum-Ra he's literally powered by evil. That's what keeps him animate. It's every evil deed feeds into Mum-Ra's existence. He's a walking corpse.
Which is all the more reason that it's not entirely obvious that he's the only human being in the main cast of Thundercats.
No, he's not. He's not the only human being within the main core cast. The warrior maidens are human. Hachiman's human. In fact, Mum-Ra flatly says Hachiman is as old as he is. Dr. Dome-Tome's human. Do I need to keep going? I don't think I need to.
At least, Mum-Ra used to be a human being. He's an ancient Egyptian sorcerer who was granted immortality by his gods, who he calls the ancient spirits of evil. Egyptian history is avoided on Thundercats, but it's hard.
I'm sorry, what? It's avoided? How is it avoided when they had literal magic fights above the Sphinx? How is it avoided when the ancient spirits of evil are based on the Canoptic jars? You are stupid.
Hard to miss that Mum-Ra is a mummy who lives in a pyramid, and the ancient spirits of evil have human bodies and animal heads. Just like many gods of Egyptian mythology, Mum-Ra's name is a portmanteau of mummy, and the Egyptian sun god Ra. So, while the Thunder...
Yes, and in the episode Sword in the Hole, when he's about to cast the Sword of Omens into a black hole, he chants the names of multiple Egyptian deities, including Apophis. Good lord.
Cats arrived from Thundera, and the mutants come from the planet Plunder, and even the Burbles arrived on Third Earth in a spaceship. Mum-Ra has been here all along.
Yeah, that's a fun thing. Burbles actually reproduce so quickly they outpopulated their planet. And yes, that should horrify you.
Of all the Thundercats characters, he's the one with whom we share DNA.
Actually, at this point, I don't know. I'd imagine his DNA is really broken down. Like, this is several thousand years that he's been decaying at this point. I'd imagine we probably share more with the warrior maidens.
And he's not completely wrong about being upset at the invasion of his planet.
Yes. Yes, he is. Because the entire reason why he's not mad at the Burbles. He's not mad at the Warrior Maidens or the Wolos. He's mad at the Thundercats because they interrupted the fact that he was ruling the planet with fear and terror. They're active challengers to his evil. That's why he's mad.
Early on, the powers of the Thundercats' mystical Sword of Omens seems pretty clear. It magically extends from dagger length into a full sword. It casts a big red cat signal into the sky to summon the other Thundercats. It shoots energy beams, and it allows Lion-O to see across great distances.
Buddy, if you had seen some of the show notes I've seen with Leonard Starr, like you're talking about the very minor things that we are introduced to in the first couple episodes, there's one image where it shows all the Thundercats riding on a giant Sword of Omens flying through Third Earth skies. Here's the thing about the Sword of Omens we'll get into in a minute. Let me go ahead and continue playing this.
There's
sight beyond sight.
As the series goes on, however, the Sword of Omens has whatever powers it needs to have to resolve a particular plot. It can project both fire and ice at various moments, can project solid objects like walls and bridges, it flies, and even allows its bearer to fly, whenever that's convenient. It even prevents the Thundercats' home planet from exploding for a second time.
No, it didn't prevent it from exploding. It held it together by acting as its gyroscope to keep its gravity stable. It's not the same thing as stopping it from exploding.
A magical sword with many uses is fine, but as an adult viewer, it's pretty clear that the writers would just give the Sword of Omens a new power anytime they wrote themselves into a corner.
That's assuming that these writers are unskilled, and they weren't. They didn't just write themselves into a corner, saw a deadline, and say, oh no, I gotta... No, let me explain to you the truth about the Sword of Omens. So one thing that people seem to keep missing here, in the very first episode, because a lot of it's cut in terms of making it fit into a after-school 22-minute format. The majority of Thundera and the Thundercats themselves, with the exception of only Jaga, didn't even know the sword existed. They thought it was a myth and a legend. It is an antiquated, ancient weapon with mystical abilities that everybody else thought was not real. They thought it was just legend. So here's the truth of the matter. As Lion-O gets older, and as he understands the sword more, and as he puts more trust in it as a weapon and for its purpose, fighting evil, the more powerful it gets because he trusts it more, because he understands how to use it more. That's like a model kit user, a model kit builder. When he first starts using a paintbrush or an airbrush, he sucks at it. He or she sucks at it. But as they get better, same thing with art, you start to understand it better. Alex Ross didn't just pick up a pencil and magically know how to draw the ability he does now. It's a metaphor you can easily use on anything, but let's continue.
Think I'm funny, do you, Snarf?
Snarf doesn't suck, you suck.
For most of the series, Snarf is just another in a long line of annoying little squeaky voice characters who don't fit in their shows. A lineage stretching from Scrappy-Doo to Orko to Screech.
Okay, Scrappy-Doo got the raw end of that deal due to corporate meddling. Orko is genuinely enjoyable. I have no defense for Screech. I'm sorry, guys, I don't. I never cared for Saved by the Bell. But Snarf isn't annoying. He's annoying when you're a kid because he reminds you of your parents.
But Snarf once had a very specific job, acting as Lion-O's nanny.
Just let the boy come down with a fever, or the pip, or something, and who gets the blame? Poor old Snarf, that's who.
Yes, again, he's Lion-O's adopted father for all intents and purposes. So yes, he's very defensive of Lion-O. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Snarf's purpose isn't for you as a child to identify with. It's for your parents to have a character in the show who say, you know what? I like that character. He makes sense. Probably your mom. But still.
When Lion-O was a kid, Snarf was employed to watch over him and keep him safe. Once he has an adult body, Lion-O tells Snarf he doesn't need that anymore, even though he's become even more prone to getting into trouble than ever before. And Snarf's entire existence is pretty much rendered pointless. Snarf is a chronic warrior, which makes him suited to babysitting.
You know, the funny thing is, they actually had a character progression for Snarf in the sense that since Lion-O's an adult physically, he had to find another purpose than just being the nursemaid, and he found it. A couple episodes at least denoting the fact that he's getting older. Huh. It's almost like if you pay attention, you can pick up on these things.
But when he doesn't have that job anymore, the same quality is what makes him incredibly annoying. Check out one.
Oh, did everybody get that? They dunked on Snarf. Clearly they know. They know things. They're all brilliant. Look, this video is sitting at 2 million views. 2 million views. For this garbage. For this belligerent, festering pile of stupid. These unfortunately are the people who populate the nerd culture landscape. These easily debunked listicles, let's do a quick Google search and see what we can find type of nonsense. People who actually love these properties would never do something like this because they're smarter than that. And because they value it. So, you're welcome, Cyclone Metal. It made my brain hurt too when I sat here and watched it. They have more of them. I'm just not going to make everybody else suffer. They did a really insufferable one about G.I. Joe as well. Like, did you know Cobra gave their people a healthcare plan? Oh no. They run it like a corporation. You don't say. It's almost like that was a commentary. Ask Buzz Dixon sometime about it, you morons. So, any questions before we close out for today? Let me go ahead and go through the chat here. Sorry, I didn't comment on all these things as we went. Let's see here. Yes, competent herd Muddlefoot. That's from Darkwing Duck. Love this version of He-Man. Thanks to my dad for introducing me to this magical world. The 2002 version of He-Man was good, but as James Etox says, it lacked some of the heart. Let's see here. Cold Lyoko, a French cartoon, did it. Yeah, Cold Lyoko did a lot of repurposing animation. Well, Mountie, we can't bring up intelligent things like pre-production notes or symbolism. My favorite character in Thundercats is Lion-O. Let's see here. But, let's see here. It's got... Yes, I did dislike it, and I don't apologize. 24K likes, 3.6K dislikes. But I do like some of the comments here. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't find the whole, oh, there's use of red. That's not funny because big cats don't actually do that. But here, Sing Sam says, so really, what are the things only adults notice? Yeah, because they never actually brought that up, did they? You're right, Defcon, as I just pointed out. Everything they talked about here, one way or another, we did recognize as children. So, where's the adult thing? I thought they might pull out the fact that, well, in the intro, Lionel swings the sword down and it shows a shot from close to his crotch where the sword extends. Aha, it's a penis reference. No, it's called long point. It's a cutting direction for a long sword. All right, so do we have any other questions before we close out for tonight? So I can go to sleep and hopefully not get trampled by the cats. But yes, avoid Looper. Their videos are clickbait. They're unresearched, poorly done garbage. It garners attention that they really don't deserve. Here's a fun thing. If you'll see here, well, actually you won't see here, but up next on the autoplay here is Lara Legends, who, some people would compare her to just, one of them grills trying to get attention. But no, she's actually got pretty good content and she knows what she's talking about. Well, I was Beast Wars CG, especially as it was so expensive back then. I don't know why. They just decided to go that way. Didn't your cringe meter burst when these people feel so big, brain smart when they say her? Was that to me? Yeah, I'm so tired of hearing that. Start the stream over. It'll be on VOD later. But yeah, the stream will be up and ready to play a bit later tonight as well. Just. And these are the people who do the compilation videos and they do the compilation articles on things like CBR and all these other garbage websites. Like, we noticed something about Transformers. It's really inappropriate. You want to hear it? They got a character named Huffer. I wonder what he huffs. Bunch of morons. Man, these internet company channels suck. They only get views for nostalgia. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Is it just me or do these people miss the point of why people love certain properties? Well, of course they do. Because they're just here to get cheap money. Let's make a Beast Wars Redux with 2D animation. I mean, we apparently have a comic coming, so I'm waiting to see how that one works. Megatron has a trigger on his crotch. The only place that's ever actually made that funny is Robot Chicken. Because I expect parody from them. I don't expect intellectual takes on properties from them. At least they're honest in what they do. More than I can say for these idiots. Laura Legends is the proof that a nerd can be in good physical shape and actually cares about what she's talking about. So is Tyler Baker on Fans of Power. That dude is jacked. But no, we could always pull up Watt Culture stuff. We could pull up all these articles. Maybe another time. Whatever happened to good storytelling instead of pandering to demographics? Well, unfortunately, you're always going to pander to demographics one way or another. You're always going to. In so much as you have to make things suitable for a certain audience or you have to make it palpable to a certain audience. I mean, even 80's cartoons did this. They took R-rated characters like RoboCop and Rambo and made them palatable to children. So I can't dunk on that too much. They keep getting money because they're easy background noise and they put a lot of ads in them. We don't talk about Crane Brain from GoBots. Bad, Jody. All right, well, it's been fun. I'm going to go ahead and kill the stream, and